if you don't ever do it consistently, you will not ever run the marathon.
で、A っていうやつに B を一緒にやると、その A も B もどっちもね、できるみたいな。
Welcome to the lazyfluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese, so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Miami.
And the topic of the day is habits. But before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and drop a review to our platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, habits. Do you really want to learn Japanese, but for some reason you can't stick to anything that you start? Today we're talking about habits and language learning. I guess, and fundamentally, like what language learning looks like. I mean, I guess I'm kind of basing this off of personal experience I've had with trying to help some intermediate as well as beginner Japanese learners get more out of their Japanese learning.
Mm-hmm.
As I've also experienced with people from my class experience, but I'm pretty sure a lot of the stuff that I've thought about, you probably maybe also thought about as well with your English education. Although I will say, like, it's a little different though. You know what I'm saying? In America, if you're learning Japanese, you're a very specific type of person. Whereas if you're learning English in Japan, you're just a Japanese person because everybody has to learn English.
まあね、みんな習うからね。
Yeah. But the first thing I guess I wanted to discuss is habits. And the reason this is, I didn't just call this like language learning or something like that, is to me, fundamentally, I see this is kind of true with everything, anything you can learn, but more so than anything, or for a lot of common school subjects that people put in that category of like math, sciences, whatever, where you can like cram overnight for a test or whatever, even like go through an entire year's worth of content over the summer, like some people do. For languages, I just don't think that there's any way you can cheat code it. It's either you have had a lot of exposure with the language, like a lot of it in some way that you're very interested in, or you haven't. Do you have any, before I go into other perspectives of this?
Other what?
Oh, I'm saying, and like, how do you view language as like something that you learn?
まあ実際そうよね。さっきも言ってたようにね、一日徹夜してできるもんじゃないっていうのは絶対そうで、まあ徹夜してできるもんはまあヒストリーぐらいかな、歴史ぐらいかな。
Well, I mean, I think you can test a lot of stuff in school, and even with language, if you know it's like a vocab test, you can obviously do that.
確かに。
But you can't. I guess what I was meaning to say is you can't shortcut your way into general proficiency with the language, or you should say fluency.
あれじゃん。やっぱ言語ってさ、スピーキングと、ライティングとリスニングと、あと何がある？リーディングか、そう。なんか4つの要素があるから、他のこの 4つも要素があるやつってなかなかないじゃん。だいたい、まあ例えばじゃあ、数学だとするとアウトプットかインプットの2つしかないじゃん。もうそれそこまで待っていいよ。アウトプットの仕方にさ、種類はないじゃん。とか。
Yeah, I would definitely say that there's a very distinct separate but related fields specifically with language learning, whereas for like it's hard to make a comparison to math. It's just such a fundamentally different thing. There's kind of a practice element to getting better at understanding patterns with math as well. But as a man who's crammed for many math tests, and something that when I went to like and that this kind of I'll discuss later on, but I went to like a liberal arts school. I knew a lot of people who were like complete whizzes, super hyper nerds for every subject, but they'd fail through Spanish. Like literally, they just couldn't do it. They tried to do, somebody. I'm not gonna throw any specific names out, but plenty of people that have like tried to do the night before studying for a Spanish test, where they'd have to like speak or reproduce Spanish or write, and yeah, there's no way to do it. And one of the things that I kind of think about every time I think about like wanting to learn languages is, for me, so to give some backstory for, I guess, newer listeners and just for transparency's sake, I've learned Japanese in many different ways. I learned it starting in college, which means I've messed around with textbooks. I've also messed around with like test taking with Japanese proficiency tests. I've also done like really dumb strategies, like just trying to like memorize random kanji, or in my opinion, that's a very dumb strategy. And then I have the current way I do, which is just engage with Japanese material and actually learn, like just learning through natural exposure. But obviously you can't just do that off the bat because you have no knowledge to do anything like that. I'm like, what's, I think maybe we talked about a long time ago, but when would you say that you started engaging with English outside of what you had to learn for class, if that makes any sense?
When?
Yeah.
私中
And how did that look like?
中3ぐらいの時になんか学校で2週間だけオーストラリアにホームステイできるみたいなやつあって、それに参加して、その時に最後さ、感謝の時にさ、まあなんとかなんとかありがとうございましたみたいな言うじゃんね、お別れの時に。その時に、マジでThank you ぐらいしか言えなくて、あ、これはやばいと思って、なんかその時なんかみたいな感じで、なんかスイッチが入ったっていうか、なんかトリガーになったのかな。で、それでその後帰ってオンラインの英会話みたいなやつがあって、それをやったのかな。そう、そんな感じ。
Okay, that makes sense. And then I'm assuming gradually from what you're saying, eikaiwa, does that mean you were like, how did that look like? And were you consistently listening to music or TV shows all of a sudden, or like when did that start?
なんか中学2年ぐらいから結構ウェスタンミュージックは聴いてたから、One Direction とかね、そうめちゃめちゃ流行ってたんだけど、その時期それとかで聞いてたんだけど、でもあんまりなんていうの、リズムで聞いてた人だから、あんまり何言ってるかよくわかんないけど、なんか好きだったみたいな。で、その中3とかからかな、中2中3、まあそんぐらいからYouTube とかでも結構海外のコンテンツとか見始めて、その時は全然わかんないから、まあ、字幕つけたりなんなりで、なんかやってた。やろうと思ってやってなかったかも。
So, okay, that's perfect. That's kind of what I was interested in saying, because I feel like that is, yeah, that's kind of what I was interested in hearing about, and what my personal experience, and a lot of people I know who've become fairly fluent in a language or any language, this all seems to be the case. And maybe people who are learning Japanese, people know people around them who are fluent in Japanese, and I would maybe look into how they talk about their studying and see if this is the case or not. But basically, I've noticed that the people who end up being very proficient don't realize at what point maybe they can't. It's harder to point to a specific event, but what they can point to is interests they have that they just engage with that happen to be in the other language. Like whether or not they would be learning the other language, they would be engaging with the activity. And this is to say, like, it's kind of like, and so how I think of when somebody's saying, and I've come across many people like this, like, I really want to learn Japanese. I've been trying for a very long time. I can't seem to get anywhere with learning Japanese. I've tried doing this thing. I've tried doing that thing. I've tried doing this, that, whatever. Nothing works. I have a few questions in my head pop in my mind. And I put these as notes to myself just so I can get them all here. So the first one is, do you enjoy any part of the process of engaging with the other language? Like, do you enjoy listening to movies? Do you listen to music? Do you enjoy going through textbooks? Let me go Japanese. Do you enjoy writing calligraphy? Do you enjoy doing any of that? Do you enjoy reviewing note cards? If no is your answer to every single one of these, this is a red flag that you probably don't actually care about learning the language. That's my personal opinion. If you enjoy literally no part of the process,
全部丸じゃなくてもいいでしょ、別に。私はライティングは嫌いだからさ。ライティングは×になるけど。
I'm just saying, if literally all of it is not something you're interested in, then you might be interested in the idea of learning a language, or you may be interested in, for example, I think this one's fairly common, especially with Japanese and like intro classes, where you specifically just like the specific content related to the language that's separate from the language. It's very interesting to say, but like maybe you like anime, but you literally, there's nothing else outside of that. Like you would be fine watching anime dubbed, English dubbed, and you would have no issue with that. And it's just the content. It's actually nothing more than that. And or another thing that I've met, and I do think that applies to a lot of people I've met, is you're interested in talking about you're interested in talking about Japanese because maybe you're interested in the culture. So you like anime and you maybe are able to go to, let's say, a Japanese club or something, and then you find other people who are also interested in the same thing you're interested in. So you're not necessarily interested as much as studying or improving in the language as much as just having a friend group or something like that. There are a lot of different ways that this could realistically happen. But these are the first questions I come to mind when I think of something like that. Do you have any personal experiences of maybe somebody similar around you? They say they say, I really want to learn English. I really want to learn English. But every time you check in with them, they say their English hasn't improved. They haven't done anything to improve their English, but they always like stress about how they really want to improve their English or anything like that.
まあでも最近はその留学の留学行くってなんだっけ
Yeah.
前回のエピソードで多分言ったと思うんだけど、まあそれでまあ20人か20人ぐらい行けるんだけどね。でそのグループその留学のまあそのプログラムの中にいる人たちがなんかどうすればいいみたいな、どうやって英語勉強したらいいのみたいな、普段どういう勉強してるとか聞かれて、まあなんて答えればいいんだろうと思って。でも一応そのなんていうの、オンライン英会話をおすすめしたりして、あと今やってることって私別に勉強はしてないんだよね。例えばドラマとかね、ネットフリックスとかを英語で見たり、あとポッドキャストを聞いたり、まあ YouTube だったりねっていうのをまあ全部英語で見てるから、で分かんなくてもそのまま飛ばしちゃうんだよ。なんかたまに全然分かんなくてってめげる時もあるけど、でもだいたいすっぽかしてそのままなんか流してる感じだから、なんか多分でもね、ビギナーの人にとってはちょっと難しいかもね、そういうのは。なんか
I mean, there's always content that you can find at your level, and there's always ways, I think, even from the very beginning, to engage with something you like in the language. But in my head, oh, go ahead.
グラマーっていうか、単語とかグラマーが何にもない人はさすがに無理よ。
I mean, I think you should see. There's this very good video that I always mention it, but this is what's his name? Steve Krashen. That he speaks German. He's a linguist. I've mentioned him multiple times, but there's a video on YouTube I think from like 15 years ago, so he speaks German, and it's a very engaging presentation. He's presenting a paper that he wrote about language learning, and part of in the paper that he wrote about it, when he's presenting it, he switches from English to German, and just starts speaking in German while continuing the presentation that he's doing. I don't know any German. Fun fact, apparently at some point I did when I was a kid. I currently don't know. Yeah, currently don't know any German. And he puts up his hand and he goes, whatever, the word for hand in German. And he just kept saying over and over again. And then he slowly builds by pointing. And obviously I can't remember now, but in the moment when I heard it, I could actually follow what he was saying. And he slowly built up with things that you could actually view on screen that you already know, like your hand, a piece of paper, whatever. And I could follow his presentation despite knowing literally no German.
本当か?
Yeah, I can show you. Or not like every word, but I could get the general gist of what he was trying to say. And so the thing is, even with no reference point, if you think you have no reference points, you always have reference points that humans have because humans are humans. You know what I'm saying? You have your sight, you have your hearing, you have your sound. Humans have seen other humans. Like that's why hand is such a good thing. Like you've already done a lot of learning as a kid, and so nobody's truly learning a language with no baseline for objects. This is to say, like I said, go ahead.
それはベイビーがまあなんていうの、言語を習得していく過程だけど、やっぱり小学校でもさ習うじゃん。小学校で漢字まあひらがな、小学校じゃね。幼稚園でひらがなカタカナ習って小学校で漢字とか習うじゃん。 で、
Yeah.
そこでまあ日本語、国語でその教科書とか読んでなんか理解していくから、まあ完全にそういうプロセスを立ってベイビーのやり方でずっとやるのは、まあ、ある程度いくかもしれないけど、かなりのアドバンストレベルにはなれないとは思うけど、
I'm not talking about how babies do it, by the way. I'm talking about babies have to learn. Babies don't learn what my hand is by learning English. They have to learn what a hand is. They have to separate that my hand is not my same thing as my chair, or the hand is not the same thing as a wall. So babies are trying to figure that out. Adults already know what a hand is and what a chair is. They just have to learn the language that the other way that you express it. So I'm not really, and for me, the vast majority of my Japanese, when it started getting a big spike in improvement, was through just natural input from things I'm already engaging with. But something I wanted to make sure, because there's still a lot of one to cover, is one more question that I have when I hear that someone's having this problem, if they've tried to do this method, that method, and they can't do anything consistently, is what does the end result of you learning your language look like? What does your day-to-day look like? Are you using this language? Is there any situation where you imagine yourself using this language? And if no is the answer to that question, I would also question why you're learning the language. And I feel like for Japan, this is very, very relevant, where English has no reason. Like there's not even a like made up reason for a lot of people's wanting to learn English. And this is also one of the reasons I think like English education shouldn't be a stress in Japan, because there's not really as big of a need. But like a lot of people, it's almost they want to learn it for status. And I will say, and maybe that works for some people.
まあね、で会社とかでもやっぱり重宝されるんだよ。そのできる人はその外資系行ったりとか、まああとその履歴書にもとかも書いてけるし、あとそうだね、まあ社会的なステータスにはなんのかな。
Yeah, but as a runner, every time I hear that, like a very unclear, no clear attachment to language / culture, no clear goals or like any sort of like, what would you call attachment towards those goals, like very lofty up in the air, no clear strategy, switches off every time they've done anything. I kind of hear it like, man, I really wish I could run a sub 2-hour marathon. And they're like, what have you done? Well, I ran half a mile 3 months ago. And I think I might run a half. What is it? Another quarter mile 2 months from now, or something like that. And I'm like, you will never like. Yeah, no. It literally is like, I think maybe that's a perfect analogy, because running I think is very like language. Like obvious, like with fitness, you and doing running, you don't just lose it if you stop in a day. But if you the less you do it, the more out of shape you get. I think out of shape is a great way to put it. And if you don't ever do it consistently, you will not ever run the marathon quick. It doesn't matter if you do it like 2 times a week or something. Like, and I feel like the same thing is true with language. Like, you really have to get into a process. For example, my current, the way I guess you could say I currently study or whatever or engage is my hobbies naturally overlap. It's actually it's like almost impossible for me to not go a day without engaging with Japanese, just because there's a huge overlap between what I would do in a day and Japanese learning. And that's like a very good thing for me, and one of the reasons I feel like I've had more success with learning Japanese. But like this is something I don't think I addressed in the podcast, but or maybe I said it one time, like reading for me in English was ruined by the educational system, and the thing that re-sparked my interest in reading was Japanese books, especially when I went to Book Off, another Book Off conversation. But and because of that, me, like, I want to read, and my only interest really in reading, it comes from Japanese text. I see English text and I think it's like pragmatic, like I need to do this because I'm either typing something that needs to be in English or I'm just communicating. But when I see Japanese text, I'm like, ooh, this is something asking for me to engage with it. Like, this is entertainment, I guess. I don't know if you feel like that with Japanese or English, but I know that you don't. I don't think you read Japanese as a hobby, right?
なんか 本読んだ方がいいよって言われて、あ、読むかと思って頑張って読もうとしたけどね、眠くなるね。なんか、そう、あんま、うん。
What
結
about with
構、
English? Is it the exact
エ
same?
ングリッシュもね、読んでないね。もうなんか、最近は時間ないって言うと怒られるから、まあ、そのために作ってないっていうか、そうね。そしたら、なんか、映像コンテンツ見ちゃう。
Yeah, that makes
なん
sense.
かもう、そうそう、
But before,
for
yeah,
fun のために、まあ、疲れて、それを、なんか、癒すために、面白いとかね、ビデオ、ムー
yeah,
ビ
you
ーを
do
見る。
have. Yeah, I was gonna say you do have videos, and I guess that's the first thing. I don't want to leave this as if you, especially if you're somebody that feels like you're in this position. I do want to actually give some very practical advice. If you do believe that you have assessed, I have some interest that makes sense on some level. Like I'm saying, if you realize that if you've said no do I enjoy any part of this process, I don't really know what an end result would look like or care about it, and I don't actually think I would ever use the language in any circumstance, and I'm not using it as a form of mental exercise, whatever, then I'm sorry, recommend you probably won't be successful in your language learning goals. But if you do meet any one of those criteria, I would say that, like, just like me, it sounds like in another way that, to rephrase what she said, she wasn't interested in the reading, but she found something she did enjoy, which is watching Netflix. I think you're into Netflix. And so I would recommend that try anything that you currently do, anything that you currently do that is not related to language learning that you enjoy doing, you can probably insert language learning into that. And especially if you like the other culture, it will actually become more enjoyable from having done that. But that's not really in a habit yet. But like with a lot of stuff that people start doing that they do out of enjoyment, they will tend to do it more than once. And doing something more than once is like half the job, kind of. And once you've gotten to do something, like if you've done something once a day, it doesn't matter how much the commitment is, 10, 15 minutes a day, and you've done it for 2 weeks, you won't even think about it. Like for me, like I said, with like stuff I do on a daily basis with Japanese, which is like reading, journaling, and especially watching anime or something like that, or like reviewing some vocab, I don't even like consciously think about it. It just happens. Like it triggers. And have you heard or read the book Atomic Habits? It's like one of the most well-known
今それ言お
books.
うとしたんだよ。さすが、そう。今、それを言おうとした。マジで同じこと。そう、オートミック・ハビッツっていうね、なんだっけ著者を忘れたけど、そこで、やっぱり何か自分が好きなことに付随して何かをやるっていう、付随して何かをすると、できるようになる。例えばもともと A っていうことをやってて、で、そこに B っていう、新しいものを今チャレンジしたいと。で、A っていうやつに B を一緒にやると、A も B もどっちもね、できるみたいなやつ。そう。
Yeah. It is if you're somebody who doesn't have that A or B, or sorry, that A, like the thing that you really like doing, I would say that you do still have things that you do every day without thinking about it. For example, and this is, I think, talked about Atomic Habits, which is or they're called triggers, I think, which are like triggers. Events that you do every single day, and without fail, always, easily. For example, one, sleep. Well, even more basic, like, you know what, even if you don't shower, everybody sleeps. Whether you like to or not, you do sleep. And you do get tired before you sleep. And so you wanting to go to your bed to sleep could be a trigger. Obviously, if you're too tired, that might be a bad trigger. But something that other people also do is wake up. And that one everybody does. And hopefully, if you slept correctly, you will have some energy when waking up. And so for me, a lot of my habits are tied to like waking up. I almost think like 3 things I almost do every time I wake up. Or if, for example, if you notice that you pull your phone out like every morning to do something, that is another habit that you can try. I think we've talked about this before, but it's very fundamentally hard to start a new habit from scratch. But something that I think is recommended in Atomic Habits is instead of starting a new habit from scratch, you can replace an old habit with like basically you take a trigger, which would be waking up, and then you have, let's say, checking your phone. And for the very beginning of it, you'll have to force yourself to do it. Instead of checking your phone, let's say you replace that with reading a book in English if you're studying English.
そうだね。
The first, whatever, assuming that you enjoy reading, that will make it easier. But the first, whatever, week or so, you're still going to have to force yourself to do it. And I see it like when a lot of people are wondering, like, how does one person do something for a month or years without thinking about it? Like me with vocab review, I don't even know how many days consecutively I've technically done it, but I don't remember when I wasn't doing it, and it doesn't take up more than 5 minutes in my day. So it's like a very small thing. But the thing is, you don't really think about it like that. All you have to do is have enough determination or whatever, or discipline to get past 2 weeks. Really 1 week, honestly, of take one part of the thing that you do every day that you don't think you should be doing. Something you think is negatively impacting you. Replace that with something you think is positive that you enjoy with a language that you're engaging with. And if you can stick with that with 1 week, I think technically it's optimally 2 weeks, then you won't even be, you'll be confused as to how you were ever doing the previous thing that you were doing before. Oh, do you have more thoughts about that? I was going on not a tangent, but how about with your like daily, is there anything that you do with like daily, what do you call it, English and daily engagement with English that you don't think about it?
トミックハビッツで言ってたのが、何々をした後に何々をするとか、なんか具体的にそのゴールをセットするとより確実に習慣化できるっていうのは言ってた。
Yeah, I do think you definitely engage with English inadvertently every single day. Granted, like, because we have to do all the communication stuff for the podcast or whatever, there's always like, oh, this is a great example. I guess the podcast. Actually, this is a great example. If anybody's noticed, so how we started the podcast, it was a whim completely. We were looking for a way to, we were both like vaguely interested in, well, I mean, I was interested in doing a podcast, and I just brought it up to Aimee, and she's interested in, yeah, but you were interested in English. And then, and I was interested in Japanese, and then I just brought it up, and then I was like, hey, let's do the first episode next week. And then we did, and we have not missed a single episode since we've started.
ね、いろいろあったけどね。
Yeah, I mean, we've had a bunch of stuff where we thought we would, but we have not missed a single episode since we've started. And now, I don't know if you even think about it, Aimee, that much, but like when it's time to do the podcast, I'm like, oh, it just happens. I don't know, like regardless of anything else in the week, it gets done, and it doesn't feel like a monumental hurdle that we're jumping over every time. It's kind of like what is there's an expression with the guy who pushes this giant boulder up a hill. Maybe it's like Greek philosophy, I can't remember. But for some reason there's a big rock, and I think somebody gets like cursed to have to eternally push it up a hill and have it roll back down. I'm not sure if this sounds familiar to you, but yeah, it's like a big rock, and a guy has to push it up and roll it down, and it's like every time this guy hypothetically would have to bring this up the hill, it's always difficult getting it up the hill, but every day that you continue to push the rock up the hill, it becomes easier to get the rock up the hill. And maybe for running it makes more sense. It's very tangible, actually, where the first time you run, like say 5 miles in the morning or something, it can be brutal, but like the 100th time you do it, you're not even thinking when you're running, probably.
まあ確かにね。そうそうそう。まあ鍛えられるしね。そう。
Yeah. I'm trying to make sure if I want to cover anything else. One thing I will say is that something I didn't mention is goals are also very important in the sense, like if you're very aware that you're not actually interested in like if you're interested, know why you are interested in language, like you like doing it because learning languages is a good mental exercise, whatever, then I mean I totally wouldn't worry, but that's like a totally valid goal, or just like reason to do it. And I don't think you need to like go really hard and like get super fluent or whatever. And I'm not saying that that's what makes success. I'm just saying that sometimes actually thinking about, hey, do I like learning this language? Like I think I like the idea of being fluent, but do I like anything that has to do with this? Why am I really wanting to learn Japanese? like asking yourself these questions might give you at least help you realize, hey, is this something that I should actually put more effort into because it's something I do care about? Or maybe I care about something else and I'm trying to fulfill that something else with this idea of being fluent in a language. Because I definitely have met people like that as well. Yeah. This was people liked our last episode that we talked about language learning, and so that's why I decided to do another one about habits this week. So yeah, let us know. 戻りました。
We're back.
今回あゆみは文句を言わなくちゃいけない。
I'm just tired. Like I'm recording this at 7 a.m. and started preparing recording at 6:30. Yeah, too tired, too sleepy. Yeah, just ね。
でも理由があるでしょ？
like I go to this hospital for rotation, and it takes like 1.5 hours to 2 hours to get there, and like one way, so it's probably around 3 to 4 hours every day, and it's the starting time is 9 a.m. but like sometimes we have to go there at 8:15, so that means I have to leave where I live right now at like 6:40 a.m. or something. So yeah, that really tires me.
昨日の場合だとその3時から始まるけど、どうせなんか9時から始まる可能性があるから。
Yeah, like so the secretary at the hospital of I'm doing this rheumatology department, and the secretary there said, "Oh, sometimes doctors change the schedule, so make sure to come at 9 in case they change." So, but like, so like there was someone in my team went there like at 9 a.m. but she said that the how do you say, the meeting room was not open at that time, so like yeah.
で結局いつ始まったの
？3 p.m.
6時間待たなくちゃいけなかったってこと？
Yeah, the day before we finished a conference at 6:30 p.m. and I came back home at 8 or 8:30 p.m. So yeah, that was really
でも
exhausting.
昨日4時半に終わったって言ってたでしょ？
But yesterday, but the day before.
そう。それで本当は1時間半しかなかった。でも9時から6時までの時間が取られてしまった。その他の生徒の。それは苦しい。
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to yawn in the podcast, but I'm too tired. Yeah.
英語だとそれがなんか on call?Like
on call?
24/7 on call?
Not really.
On call,
not really. It's not like, so in Japanese it's called 当直, but it's not.
当直?
Yeah, 当直. Yeah. Yeah, if somebody wanna know.
まあ、
yeah.
当直じゃないけど、学生の当直に入るかな。なんか来なくちゃいけないでしょ？ そのなんか来ると言ったら行かなくちゃいけないから。まあそれは確かに。
I'm sorry, I can keep yawning. Sorry, guys.
大丈夫。まあ他のなんていうニュースというんだかわからないけど、このポッドキャストに話したことある？一回？このマリオの映画、その新しいやつ。この新しいやつというか、昨日か、まあ今週上映されてる。まあついに上映されてるから多分。いつだったか ?3 ヶ月前かな、そのマリオの マリオの映画とアニメ化された映画の話したんだけど、ネタバレしないけど、見たことないからネタバレできない。けど、私みたいな任天堂のファン、そのような人はいい映画だと言ってるから、今日一人で映画をに行くことになった。になったというか、決めた。友達と行きたかったんだけど、結局誰も行けなくて、久々の一人の映画の体験になるみたい。この一人での映画、あゆみはやったことはありますか？
I don't go to like movie theater just in general. So,
でもやったことある？その一人だけの映画の体験。
I think I have, but usually I go like with somebody else, like my sister or my friends. Yeah.
主に私も友達と行く、ほとんどの時は。でも、本当言えば、なんかアニメ見てる時とか、ほぼアニメだけだと思うんだけど、一人で見るのが一番好き。友達と見るのがめっちゃやりたくなくて、友達が誘っても、なんか、そのアニメ見たいなら、なんか私本当にそのアニメ見たかったら、いや、なんか拒否します。なんか特にその友達と見たくないというよりも、誰もと見たくないというのが
誰とも見たくない。
そう、誰とも。それが私の問題。なぜかというと、なんか本当に見たいときは、集中して、その映画だけに、なんか全身を、なんていうか、全身を使わなくちゃいけない。でも他の人がいると、その人の、なんか、この人はこの映画が好きとか、この映画についてこの友達はどう思ってるとか、そのことがわざとなく私のなんか脳に入ってしまって、逆にその目的、そのアニメ自体が見えなくなってしまう。なんて言えばいいんだろうね。多分うまく説明しなかったんだけど。
邪魔になる。
邪魔になる。でも映画館の場合だと、どうせお金払ってるなら、みんなと私があまり興味がない映画に見に行ったら、楽しいと思うんだけど、この場合は任天堂のファン、なんていうか、他の友達そうったんだけど、できなかったんだけど、実際は多分一人での体験の方が楽しかったと思ってるから、いい結果になったと言えるかね。
enjoy
それで多分
Mario.
来週報告します。いい映画だったか、いい映画じゃなかったら報告する。And we made it to the final section. And if you've made it to the final section, then send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment language related and or otherwise, and we might respond to it on the next episode. And this episode, we had 2 comments, and one from a semi-frequent commenter, Matt. Not Shawcock's Matt, other Matt. And it's relating to our last episode on Book Off. So it goes like this. All the talk about the desirability of owning new books and the absurdly huge discounts of ever so subtly used books at Book Off made me wonder what toshokan were really like. Are Japanese public libraries ubiquitous or scarce? Are they well used and funded, or are they dying off, patroned by only a few weirdos? Do they offer manga, movies, and video games like most American public libraries do, or are they strictly for books? Do they compete with school libraries, or are public university libraries open to the public, or just students? What are the late fines like? Would it be more or less yen than a barely used copy of Girls Last Tour would cost at Book Off? And finally, are Japanese libraries run by old ladies in knit cardigans with glasses on chains, just like they are in the States? And then very finally, and in preparation for my trip, if I purchase a suitcase-sized bunch of books at Book Off, do you think it would be cheaper to buy postage in a box to mail it home or just to check the bag on my return flight? Matt or Matto. Thanks so much for the comment. And Ayumi, for you, under the name, you'll notice I bullet pointed each one of the questions. And I feel like we can just tackle them as written. I think I know some of these answers, but some of them I don't actually know. And so that's why a residential Japanese person's here. So number 1, are Japanese public libraries ubiquitous or scarce? Are they common or rare?
Ubiquitous.
Ubiquitous. Yeah. Very
And
common.
common.
Is what,
Ah.
yeah, very common.
パブリックはなんだろう、それぞれの例えば自分が住んでる市とか区とかの自分のエリアにあると思う。その1個は最低1個はあるかな。そうそ
Okay.
うで、そうね、あとはそのパブリック、ごめん。
Are they well used and funded, or are they dying off patroned by only a few weirdos? You've used the library a fair amount, I will say, and I don't actually know many people in the U.S. I know they exist, and depending on where you are, a lot of people might. But I don't know if the average person,
ちっちゃい
especially
子
for
か
your
ら
age.
お年寄りまで結構行ってて、でお年寄りはもう新聞読みに行ったりとか、まあ普通に本読みに行ったりとかで、でちっちゃい
Wait,
子は
newspapers? People go to the library
あ、
to
そう
read
そうそうそう、
newspaper?
ニュースペーパー読めるんだよ。いろんな新聞ってさ、いろんなさ、朝日新聞、読売新聞とかいろいろあるじゃん。産経新聞とかなんか全部、
Yeah.
そう置いてあるか
People
ら、
go to the
それ読
library
んで
to read.
そうで、なんかそういう
That might be
新
something
聞読む
Japanese.
専用のなんか広めのテーブルで、なんか新聞のなんて言うんだろうね、こうやって開くんだけど、ここの
Yeah.
なんていうかわかんないけど、折ってる場所にちゃんとなんか棒みたいなのがついてて、なんかバインダーみたいな感じで、それを置ける専用のテーブルがあるんだけど、それがあったりとか。
Maybe I'm just not an American library goer, although I've been a few times. I've never at least been aware of that thing. People did read newspapers, but you'd buy them from like an outdoor thing. Like
ね、ちょっとちっちゃめの、とか。
Yeah.
あ
That
と
definitely
ね、
sounds.
私の実家の近くの、図書館だと、こっちもあるか。DVD とかの貸し出し、CD とかの貸し出しがあって、その DVD とかビデオだと、それを見る専用の、なんていうの、パソコンかテレビみたいな見れる部屋があるんだよ、図書館に。
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I think I'll extend, because you said, do they offer manga, movies, video games like most American public libraries do, or are they strictly books? I think you're answering that already, but something I'm going to attach on to here is, what is like the average person who attends or goes to a library? Because in America, maybe this seems weird to you, or maybe it's not weird in Japan's like this, but a very common attender of public libraries are homeless people. I'm not sure if you knew that, but this is true, especially in bigger cities where they a lot of times offer showers. Showering at public libraries is one of the only places that and I think you mentioned this before, and we should have mentioned it more, but one of the only places that you can, especially in Japan, where you can be without having to pay for it. In bigger cities, you have to pay for parking and stuff. So libraries is somewhere that you can be with shelter that you don't have to pay for.
確かにね。
And so do you know if libraries are commonly used, or does Japan have no, you're gross, because Japan does have that with some stuff where they're just really brutal about
そもそもホームレスの人が少ないね。でプラス、そうね、私まあ東京では結構ホームレスの人を見るけど、私の実家の近くとかは全然見たことなくて、でたまにちょっとぽいなっていう人はちょくちょく見るけど、でまあ図書館にもちょくちょくちょっとぽいかなっていう人はいるけど、あんまりいないね。もういても1人か2人とかそんな感じで。
Yeah, but in Tokyo though, have you seen the library specifically that, like, have you been to a library in Tokyo?
なんか東京のね図書館行ったことないな。なんか借りるのに多分読むのは大丈夫なんだけど、借りるのにそこの地域に住んでいるか、そこの地域の学校に行ってるっていう人しか借りれないのよ。多分まあ返す保証がないから、返してもらえる保証がないから貸し出しはしてないんだけど、多分立ち入りはできるんだよ。
I mean,
けど行ったことない私。
I get okay. Yeah, I was more focusing on like, so one thing I do, and I think you know this, every time I travel somewhere is I go to the public library. like almost everywhere I go. And it's not necessarily just look at books and rent books. And so I was wondering if mainly you've seen homeless people in Tokyo libraries or anything like that. Because I know with your school library, like when I went there, I'm technically not even supposed to be there. So I was wondering if they actually have harder permissions on people getting into public libraries. And based on what you're saying, it sounds like that might be the case.
私の図書館は結構特殊で、まあなんていうの、ユニバーシティって言ってるけど、他のなんかメディシンとかヘルスケア以外のデパートメントがないの。だからその学生とその医療従事者とか先生とかしか使えなくて、一般の人は使えないのね。でしかも、その品揃えっていうか、なんていうの、その置いてある本が大体医学書ばっかで、普通の本があんま全然なくて、そう。
Yeah, even I think I mentioned before, and maybe we can go through the rest of the questions because we have another comment. But even in my college, the library that's inside a campus that only students live on, anybody can enter. So if you came in all the way to the thing, you can still enter. But okay, so other questions. Let's see. Open to the public or not, or just students? It seems like that depends. Would it be cheaper? Late fees. Is it expensive? Like, what happened? How much do you get fined for renting a book?
Late fine はないね。
Huh?
そのレートの度合いによると思うけど、まず例えば2週間しか借りれないってやったら、2週間経つじゃん。でちょっと遅れるとするじゃん。ちょっと2、3日とか。そうすると私の場合はなんかお知らせみたいなのが来てとか、お知らせ、電話とかね、ちょっとまだ返却ないんですけどみたいな。でそれで返せば何も問題ない。でその1ヶ月とか2ヶ月経っても来ないってなったらまた別の話なんじゃない。私はそこまでのレベルに達したことはないか分かんないけど、全然罰金はない。
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, the thing is, trust is so high, or I don't know if trust, the assurance that people return books is probably so high that I could see them not charging in Japan. But and then very finally,
あるわ。1個ごめん。付け足して、その罰金はないけど、でもその次の本が何日間借りれないとかはある。
Okay, that makes sense. So last question. And finally, are Japanese libraries run by old ladies in knit cardigans with glasses on, chains, just like they are in the US? How much of you know what I was talking about? It's like the glasses with the...
そうね。そういう人もいるし、男の人もいるし、たまに若者でなんかバイトっぽい人もいる。けど、大体中年のおばさん。
And what is their personality, would you say?
落ち着いてる感じ。
There's like the meme in the US where you have like somebody makes a noise and they go shh and like they look at you from
そう。
Are they
場所によるのかな。
But from your personal experience, have you had like a positive, negative?
いや、特になんか別にないな。
Okay. Just because we have like another very good question. Thank you so much.
ありがとうございます。
Yeah. We have another question from one of our MVP commenters, Oddity. But first, before we get the actual question, Oddity did the awesomeness of, I guess I'm not sure if you have it open, but there's on the Google Drive for this episode, you'll notice I put images because Oddity actually designed, I guess out of the kindness of her heart and realizing how much I like book offs and how much I wanted to, what's it called? Get book off merch. She actually made book off t-shirts. She designed book off t-shirts as well and put all the assets. Did you find it?
本当だ。
Yeah, and so you can go through and we'll put them up on screen. There's a few different designs.
かわいい。かわいいね。
Yeah. So these are all
センスだな。
Yeah. They're all three different book off shirt designs. The front and back as well as Well, yeah, you can do it. So the thing is, really appreciate these came out very nice, especially getting the original logos. I noticed that you also completed I noticed that the full hand of the book off when I made the book off video, they don't actually have, I couldn't find the full hand, so I had to create it myself. But the thing is, I mean, although if I get the opportunity, I might have to take you up and get these actually made so I can wear one. Maybe I should have done so for the video. But part of me, it's like, I want official merch. But if there doesn't exist official merch, this does look official. So I also like how it's all black. I keep it on theme.
T シャツかわいいね、めちゃめちゃ。欲しいな。
Yeah.
別にブックオフのファンじゃないけど。
Excuse me, being in this podcast and a fan of book off.
いいけど可愛いからデザイン性でいいね、これ。
Yeah, thanks so much. I really enjoyed looking at that and getting all the assets. I will be able to use that on further book off endeavors. But as for your actual... Oh, go ahead.
レイジーフルエンシーのさ、ロゴもこれにしようよ。
Yeah. Maybe we can attach it on Twitter. We'll see. We'll get some, rep them out. But yeah, as for the actual question. So, glad you raised the issue of protest and political awareness in Japan. I've read some articles on the matter recently. One of them from the Financial Times talks about how Japan's aging population will soon cause a workforce shortage, which will likely lead to a significant increase in wages. More importantly, this will give young people considerable socio-political bargaining power, which has the potential to change work culture and attitudes. The other article is from NYT, New York Times. But there's a paywall, so here's a shitty summary from another outlet that picked it up. It mentions a controversial proposal by this Yale economics professor, Yusuke Narita, who suggests that the elderly in Japan should commit mass seppuku as a means to solve Japan's population issue. I'm curious about your take on both. Do you think that disengagement of youth from politics, social change in Japan will only be possible through functionalists, means like workforce conditions changing, rather than outright political activism? I mean, that was a lot, but I will say that the second one, I'll summarize. I looked at the article, and just to give Yusuke Narita some defense but context. So he did. It's kind of hard to say whether he did advocate for mass seppuku, but he basically said he referenced Midsummer, which is like do you know the movie? It's like a Swedish film where
Sure not.
Yeah, it's about a festival. It's like not about. It's inspired by Swedish tradition, and in part of the movie they have. Old people, basically when somebody gets like to 70 years old or something, the old people just jump off a cliff because like they're no longer able to be productive in society. And instead of like dying slowly and like losing all their functionality, they just jump off a cliff. Like, really happy. Well, apparently Japan had a similar, I was reading about Japan had a similar thing of doing that with people like going up on rocks or something. But this is all to say is this was very speculative when he was talking about it, and it was only talking about it in more. It didn't seem like, at least from what I could tell, a legitimate suggestion that he believes should make in policy. It was more of like nothing's improving. Might as well have people do seppuku. But since his position and outlets just couldn't refuse to make that the title, that's what they ended up going with. But what I will say is that I feel it's ridiculous to obviously to jump to seppuku, but what I will for mass seppuku. But what I will say is, in the defense of mass seppuku, I think if nothing happens, it is maybe not equally ridiculous, but also very ridiculous and cruel to expect the entire Japanese youth, which will get smaller and smaller, to basically slave labor and get almost none of the benefits of their labor, and basically just uphold an entire old Japanese population. Because the older Japan gets and the more younger people, it's going to be the more people having to work more, right? So, but with that said, I don't know why the two most obvious solutions aren't mentioned here, which is immigration, which Japan's not doing. But come on, immigration should be a solution before millions of people have to kill themselves.
But
what do you think is more likely? What do you think is more likely? Japanese people committing mass seppuku? Do you think it's more likely that Japanese people commit mass seppuku, or that they become more lenient with immigration?
それはあれもちろん一択でしょ。集団切腹に決まってんじゃん。で、中で裏切るやつがいるんだよ。途中で一緒にせーのでやろうねっつって、せーの。
Say no, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah. And the other option is automation. I clearly think like if you just balance having at least a little more immigration to offset maybe at least the amount of people dying every year. And because it seems like everything, and I haven't talked about this, and no, I'm not going to make an episode about ChatGPT. Still depresses me beyond words and this whole reality we're living in. But it doesn't look like humans are really going to be doing anything very shortly. So I think there's a good chance robotics could really uphold a large chunk of Japan's youth in the workforce. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, youth. I mean, do you think that like if workforce changes, or if change is to happen, do you think it's just going to happen like naturally, or there's going to be, or I don't know, naturally is the right word. Do you think like political activism would be like actually doing it, like starting it, as in like if this happens,
condition ってどういう
it's saying like things change in the economy such that let's say, for example, more robots come in, and so more robots come in, which reduces the stress on the workers, and it also allows elderly people to get all the stuff that they need, and nobody's angry. Or do you think that it could lead to political activism where people are like rioting on the streets saying we are tired?
逆になんかもう何もやんなくていいんだと思って何もやんなくないんじゃない？全部人任せみたいな。
I mean, I don't think well, it depends how bad it gets. Depends how bad it gets, right? Like if it gets to a point where it's like Japan's population is 80 million and 1 million of that or something, some crazy number, like let's say like 20 million of that is people under 30 and they're the only people working. So you have like or something crazy, or maybe it gets even worse or something, and then that might be something to be dealt with. But
まあ、やらなきゃいけない状況になったらやると思うよ。どんな人でも。
Okay, we'll see if IME gets involved. I would answer the first part about that, but I realized my camera is at 3 minutes left with battery remaining, and it would be a bummer if this cut out mid what's it called, recording. So yeah, thanks so much for the comment and the book off shirt design. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us in another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you had any language-related questions and or just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com. We might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Ayami.
Signing off. じゃあねー。